All right. So psychology and art, they intersect specifically, but talking about them just in general for a minute, kind of thinking of what does art do for us psychologically. That would be a nice applied way of thinking of it. So what does it do for us, or what does it do to us? Things that it possibly does for us. I mean, if you're really against art and don't think anything is interesting, then it might not do anything for you. But in general, people pick art or see in it or rally around it to search for an identity or to just find entertainment slash pleasure or to have some sort of shared experience or belongingness, which is related to a search for identity, or tells us or reminds us about our history and culture, which gives us shared experiences and is also related to a search for identity. So maybe there's just one thing it generally does for us, but they're kind of subsets of each other, so we'll talk about them a little bit. So a search for identity. Art in itself, color, expression, it all gives you a way to create, to get some tension within out of us. To figure out what is that thought you have and what do you need to do with it and where do you need to put it and what does it need to look like. Expression is the manifestation of personality. That is often believed to be the case in most cases. The things you draw, how dark are they, how light are they, how expressive, how moody, how all kinds of things. Whatever's going on inside you theoretically is what you're providing onto the page, or whatever medium you're using. It provides us a sense of order and stability. So if we can't make sense of what's going on in our own lives, we can make patterns in art that we can control. Why does this keep happening? All right. Let me get rid of this. I'm sorry. I don't know what. Okay. All right. So it provides us a sense of order and stability. We have a need to define and distinguish. Art helps us find the whole, gestalt, and unity. If we can't make sense of a bunch of little parts, we try to put them together to make some meaningful whole. And that's a lot of times what we're talking about with our personality and or our art expression. To search for and or completely form an identity, art provides you an opportunity. It's built on what you have experienced as part of your life, often cultural expectations or cultural experiences, or how people dress, why do they follow some ritual. All of this is part of your identity, and a lot of times that is put forth in art pieces. It represents an emotional striving in some cases toward who we hope to be. So an example would be African art that shows people much taller or disproportioned than they really are regularly. If you can't really be that, then you can at least express yourself in sculpture or on paper as looking how you want to look. So it's emotional striving toward what we hope to be, which goes towards Maslow's hierarchy, kind of figuring out, what do we need in our lives and what do we hope to aspire to, and does that give us hope building toward a self-actualization. And then also it gives us norms, which may or may not be fair, but what are attitudes that are normal? What are dress that's normal? When we look back at old paintings and see how people dressed, that gives us a sense of this is what they used to do at the beach. This is how they used to dress, at parties. This is what they used to do. So it provides you that experience. Also, colors themselves can convey national identities. And a national identity is just a collection of individual identities that have come together to have a certain viewpoint or expectation, view of the world. And essentially, different colors, for whatever reason they get picked, that becomes your identity that you stick with. And so if anybody is damaging that blend of colors or, attacking it verbally or something, there's a little bit of rallying around that happens. Further, for belongingness, shared experiences and belongingness, in basic, our whole lives most people's whole lives are spent seeking shared experiences and belongingness. It's the human experience, our search for connections with other people, places to belong, places to live, so on and so forth. Art can describe practices that people each experience when living together in groups. So like the rites and the ceremonies I talked about a while ago. And again, giving the social norms. How should a male look? How should a female look? A lot of this is changing, but it becomes a historical document in a way to tell us this is how it was. And maybe in some cases to tell us this is how we would like it to be. Again, colors are also for shared experiences, feelings of belongingness. Monuments themselves are built to have a shared experience, specifically a shared grief or a shared remembrance of something that happened. So like the 9/11 Ground Zero memorial, to remember what happened, to share your grief, and then to have expectations of what to do in the future, how to keep that from happening again, or how to memorialize that situation. Art for learning or being reminded about history and culture. The oldest examples are, I can't remember when, like 3,000 or so, or 30,000 years ago, something like that. But the caveman drawings in France and a few other caves throughout the world are of what they did daily, which one of the things they did daily was hunt, for example. And this is a scene, that it's etched on one of the caves, I think in France, of a hunt, showing either reminding themselves how they would do that or reminding future generations, this is how you'll go do this. This is how it works. So you don't have to keep reinventing the wheel over and over. So continuing with the history culture part, reminding, like that picture, reminding about human experiences, where's the best hunting grounds, what's the best technique. Examples in the Pueblo pottery with symbolism representing prayer formulas painted on them, so that since people weren't writing things down at the time, they weren't necessarily reading things, but they could read symbols. And as long as everybody agreed on what the symbol stood for, the idea of putting it into pottery that you would keep around and then know what to do with later made perfect sense. And then again, to remind us of history and culture, back to the statues or monuments that are erected to people who did something. Maybe it was great, maybe it wasn't, depending on how history looks back at it. But to usually celebrate something, a triumph over a foe, or a rally around, some sort of event. So art does a lot for us if you stop and think about it. It's not just, somebody painted something and slapped it on a wall and I don't care about it and I'm walking past it. It is also, I'm not going to say every piece of art tries to tell us something very specific, but much art does. So think about that the next time you get near a gallery and see if you can find something that it's telling you, either about the past or the present or even the future. All right, so then specifically Psychology Plus art, it's not something that you get a PhD in, and you're not called a psychologist, an art psychologist, but there is such a field called art therapy. And I just took this straight from American Art Therapy Association, because they're the ones who regulate art therapists, so they should know exactly how they think about it. So I'm just going to, read through it here. A therapeutic use of art making within a professional relationship. So you've gone to therapy, and you could just sit and talk, but either they have chosen or you have chosen to use art in some form. There's some sort of psychological concern, and you're going to express some of this through creating art and reflecting on the art products and processes. Kind of become aware of what traumatic event, maybe you can't say it, but you'll show it in pictures. And a lot of times that's just getting some feeling out or getting some sort of traumatic event out. And then also this last little line, enjoy the life-affirming pleasures of making art. That can come, I mean, art therapy usually would be about people who are working through something, so that would come toward the end of it. But professionals trained in both art and therapy. I can tell you, for example, SIU Edwardsville has an art therapy program that I look at a lot with students when they're interested in that. They want almost 50-50 undergraduate training in just art, learning how to do sculpture, learning how to do printmaking and such, and then just actual psychology background. So it is very much of a mix, and then they'll teach you further techniques in all those areas. So they have all the psychological background. They may specialize in spiritual, multicultural, or artistic traditions, and then they may also look through the healing potential of art. That's not every situation, but that is a lot of situations. And be reminded that technically it's not just visual art, it's also theater, dance, and music that gets counted as art therapy. So some examples, this top one here, this is this art house. It's a kit sold that if you can kind of see, like you can paint things and color up parts of it and put it around the house, that's used as a project for what goes on in this room. What is the mood of this room? So that if a child or somebody is needing to express, this is how my house feels to me. And, like that one looks like a figure that's holding something. Maybe that's something, that somebody's wielding over them, and that's not a room they feel comfortable in. This was an example of something done in an art therapy practice where this, theoretically is the person curled up in a ball in the corner, and this person's saying something to them. The walls are dark and gray. The windows are black. You're not seeing anything out there. The room is askew. This is a chaotic feeling. This is not a pleasant place. I don't know what else that was really going on in this situation, but certainly this is not saying, oh, mental health resides here. This is saying there's some concern. Maybe this person is antagonizing and I feel like a small person, and I can only hide in the corner whenever they want something, and there's no hope of looking out to see anybody there to work with or to address my situation. One good example, this Expression LaSalle Therapies, is in Montreal, Canada. One year I took some art students and some psychology students on a trip to Montreal, and Canada has a much more established art therapy usage than the United States. In the United States, it would not be seen as like a legitimate therapy in all cases, and wouldn't necessarily be on all insurance forms. If you want to do art therapy, you could, but you might have to pay for it yourself. But in Canada, it's very much part of the norm, and you can choose to go to regular therapy or you can choose to go to art therapy. So this here, we worked with some of the registered art therapists and kind of saw what they did. Just some things here. They have groups of art therapy, some that are specifically only about sexual abuse. They have drama therapy where they might sit and act out things. There might be an empty chair in the room, and we make up stories or discussions about who is in that chair that's helping us work through some situation that we have with that person that maybe we are projecting onto that chair. There's all kinds of, just dramas where you're playing a role of somebody that you need to work through. Counseling kind of happens throughout. Relaxation therapy, which kind of goes back to biofeedback and, watching your breathing and so on and so forth. Music therapy, also considered part of art therapy. So you can do this in groups or individuals. Those are options for groups, but you can interact in a bunch of those. Let's click on music therapy. Intervention method that uses music in all its forms. choose from a variety of theoretical orientations to guide and structure therapeutic work, so on and so forth. You can look through this if you have any interest in it. It's expressionlasaltherapies.ca/.ca. That'll get you there. So Expression LaSalle is a good example of art therapy. So anyway, that is what we'll say about art and psychology.